Hello everyone, welcome to HRC Games. Today we're going to be talking about For What Remains. It's a game published by DBG Games and designed by David Thompson. We're going to focus mostly today on For What Remains Streets of Ruin box. However, this game also comes with two other boxes. We've got Out of the Basement, and then we also have Blood on the Rails as well. All three of these are considered to be standalone games. They're all part of the core. I would suggest that if you're thinking about getting it, you should probably start with one, see if you like the game, and then pick up the other two. With that being said, my initial thought of this game is that it's worth every penny. It's a good game. It's one of those rare games that is really playable for both multiplayer and solo player as well. So in general, what's this game about? Well, it's a post-apocalyptic world. Some stuff went bad. Some governments were doing some nuclear tests underground, and they opened up the basement. Creatures came out, so forth and so on. I'll let you read all the backstory. The backstory is well developed. If you're into that kind of thing, it adds a little bit of flavor to the game. It kind of explains why the world's in the situation that it's in, what the different factions are, and why they're fighting. Those type of things. It's kind of got a compelling enough backstory where I could see them developing it in the future, kind of along those lines maybe of Warhammer, where they have a whole world or universe that they've kind of explored. So like I said, each faction it has a reason for being. There's a reason why they have conflicts with people, with the other factions. And the neat thing about this game is each faction has its own abilities that are unique to that faction, which kind of gives every faction a little bit of flavor. So you get two factions in each core box. So in this box you get the Freeman and the Combine, and then you have two more factions per other box as well. Like I said before, you can start with one box, or you can start with all three boxes. They're completely standalone. One does not rely on the other. I will say that if you want to get like the full flavor of the backstory of the universe, what's going on and why people are fighting, those type of things, then it's probably not a bad idea to go ahead and pick up all three as well. So what's in the box? Well, we'll start with, we have a set of rules. Right? I found them to be fairly easy to read. It's not a real in-depth game. It's not something that is going to take you a ton of time to learn, which is nice. You can jump right on in and start playing. Really clear written rules. I had a couple of questions here and there on some rules. The really nice thing that even though this is a new game on Board Game Beef, there's already a thriving forum, which people are asking questions and getting direct answers. I asked a question, and actually David Thompson, designer of the game, responded within, half an hour and gave me an answer. So the rules are well done, and there already is a lot of support for the game in the community. So any kind of questions that you have are going to be answered fairly quickly. The game also comes with these kind of interesting map tiles. They're a little bit different than your standard game, so you don't have like a normal board that you lay out that then it's one way. So you have tiles, they're two-sided, and then you lay them out according to the scenario, or if you want to just play a random game, you can just kind of throw them out to create a unique map every time. Kind of gives you endless options as far as gameplay is concerned. They are a little on the thin side, so they tend to move around a little bit if you don't have a rough surface. This gaming table that I have holds them down pretty well. You can obviously just put plexiglass on top of them if you wanted to. Another thing that I've learned through my days of squad leader, because they have lots of overlays, is this Scotch tape called removable tape. Now, you can put this on things and then take it off, and it doesn't leave any residue. So if you're having a hard time with your map maybe staying still, this is true for any game, I would highly recommend picking some of that up. You can tape things down, and then you can remove the tape. It doesn't leave anything. I've even done it on actual sheets of paper, and it worked. So great option for you. I wouldn't suggest you leave that tape on somewhere for months at a time, but I've never had any problem with it. I think it's really good stuff. It's pretty useful. You also get some character cards that come with it. Each character in the box has its own set of stats on its own unique card. Really easy to use, really handy. You can leave them on the table. The print is big enough to where you don't have to pick them up every time you want to figure something out. It also has all the abilities listed there, so that if you need to be reminded, like, oh, this character can do this, super easy to figure that out as well. To kind of go along with that, they have a couple of reference cards that have all the abilities of the characters. So if you look at your character and it says that it's huge, you can look down and say, oh, look, it's huge. What does that mean? And you can read it. Or if it says it has dual strike, you can say, look it up and say, oh, well, here's what dual strike is, and it has like the name, and then it also has the description of what that ability is. So that's pretty handy. Don't need to flip through the rule book every time you need to figure out what an ability is. As I mentioned before too, this game can be played solo. It's got two handy dandy things to use for solo play. The first is you have a activation reference card, which tells you what all the activations means. You have one for each faction because they're a little bit different. This happens to be the Freeman one. So if you are told to do something, you can look it up on this reference sheet and be good to go right away. Again, don't look through a whole bunch of rule books. And then you have these cards here that tell you what each one does. And then you just work your way through as you play the game which ones apply, and then you can roll some dice and then you figure out what they're going to do. I've played 3 or 4 games now. The AI is good. It works well. It's challenging. They have a unique system we'll talk about in a little bit to make the solo variation. You can make it harder as you get better as well. So that's a nice bonus too. You also get 2 faction books for each box. They talk about each faction's abilities, what they can do, kind of what their focus is. Very well written, clear, easy to use. Campaign book. I kind of like this. This is an interesting thing here is that you can play, obviously you can play scenario by scenario. You can make random things up. You can just play kill 'em all if you want. But you can also work your way through a campaign as well. And you can do this as a multiplayer. You can kind of go through scenario 1, 2, and 3, and then who won this previous scenario will affect the setup for the second scenario, and so forth and so on. The other nice thing about this is that they also have setups for solitaire play as well. So you can use these as individual scenarios. They give you specific things you do for solitaire play so that you're not having to make up your own solitaire things. I mean, obviously you can if you want. But there are scenarios that are set that let you get started solitaire right away. They have clear rules written for what it is that you should be doing. You also have a couple of handy dandy templates. These are for the flamethrower, and no, this is for the rocket launcher, and this is for the flamethrower to help you figure out which squares are affected by those as well. And then of course we have a whole bunch of counters. I already have mine sorted out. This is just an old container I had left over from one of my many ASL storage concoctions that I came up with. I'll have to talk about that one day. But they, not an overwhelming number of counters, easy to put away, easy to store. You also get some dice with the game too. And I can actually fit this one inside the box that the game came in, so everything can be stored together. These are some of the examples of some of the larger ones. These are the huge characters. They wouldn't fit in my box, but I just throw them in the game box. They're big enough to where they're not hard to locate or find. Those are the box components. Let's talk now a little bit about the game style and the play. This game is almost a little bit like a miniatures game in a lot of respect, except that it's played with tokens or chits. But the setup of the game, as far as you have a map and then you're moving characters around on the map, is very similar to what a solo game would be. I could see where if this game really takes off, they could even develop some miniatures to play on the existing structure of the game as well. Might be kind of neat. This game can also be played multiplayer and solo player. The solo system is really good. It's not like some other games where you feel like the solo is kind of an add-on. It wasn't really tested very well. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe it's not very competitive. This doesn't have that feeling to me, so this game plays well. So the core of the game is built upon a token or a chit draw system. So you're going to put a certain number of tokens into a container and draw them out, and that's what activates a character. So for example, I got my helmet here, old baseball helmet. The game comes with a bag. I just always use helmets. I don't know why, I just do. So if you have, let's say you have 3 characters on each side, then you would put, if you're playing multiplayer, you put 3 tokens, each one representing a character. So, and you can put, if you have a scout out and you want to make sure that it gets activated, you could put 2 tokens in there or 3 tokens. Or if you didn't want the scout to move this turn, then you could leave them out completely and put in other tokens. But you'd put in the same number of tokens as you have characters into the draw bag, shake it up, and then you draw it. And then whichever one you draw is the activated character. Then that gets put to the side, and then the next person draws, and then the next person draws, and then whoever's chits are getting drawn is who moves. Which is really kind of cool because it creates a little bit of suspense. It creates a little bit of randomness, which is good. Sometimes I think when you're playing a I go, you go consistently game every time, it can get a little bit stale and it gets a little bit too predictable in some ways. This way, if you're having to draw chits, then you are forced to think about, well, what happens if I don't draw my chit next time? And that could be a problem for you. So it kind of forces you to have a little bit of, strategy, in that you don't want to put yourself too far forward because you may not get to go for 2 more draws, and then that person could be surrounded. So it really adds a lot of flavor that way. Another great thing about this token draw system is that when you play solo, you can increase the difficulty of the game. So if you're playing on the easy kind of mode, then you can put in the number of tokens equal to the number of characters you have plus 1. Right? So if you had 5 characters for the AI out there, you'd actually put 6 tokens into the jar or into the bag. If you wanted to play a more moderate game, so a little bit more difficult, then you'd actually put 2 extra in there. And then you can also put 3 in there if you want to play even more difficult. So that means that as you get better, you can increase the difficulty of the game, because the AI, or your imaginary opponent there, is always going to get to move more than you get to move, or take more actions than you take, which really provides for a lot of variation in that gameplay, which is really awesome. So it's also really important to think about how many chits you have left in the draw bag. That's going to determine how you're going to move, how you're going to, figure out strategically what you want to do. If you're halfway through a turn and you haven't drawn any of your tokens yet, you know that you're going to kind of own the back half of that turn, so maybe you can be a little bit more aggressive. Or if you've drawn almost all of your tokens at the beginning and your opponent has more tokens left, then you may want to be a little bit more conservative. And depending on the game, that may be flip-sided too, right? You may want to rush up to a victory point or a victory condition or whatever as well. But that draw system does add some pretty cool I think ways that you're forced then to be strategic, or what your actions might be as well. Overall, the rule set is very clear, very easy to follow. The gameplay is very fast. Once you start kind of getting an idea of what the draw system is and what the abilities are, you're going to find yourself going through those turns very quick. I think that if you really know the rules, depending on how you play, depending on the scenario too, I think you could probably complete a game maybe in as little as 30 minutes, maybe more closer to around 60, depending upon, again, the size of the scenario and those types of things. But you can certainly get a game in an afternoon, no problem. If you've got a couple hours, you could probably fit in 2, maybe 3 games as well. So what are my overall impressions with this game? I really like this game. I think it's very flexible, it's very fast. There's a lot of strategic options in the game as well, and there's a lot of customization that you can do as far as like how difficult you want the solo to be, what kind of characters you want to put into the mix, how big of a scenario you want to make, how small of a scenario do you want to play, and then also the campaign options are great too. So there's a lot of variation in this game, a lot of flexibility with the system, which to me makes it a really good value for your money. Also, I think that the potential of the backstory is maybe going to add some depth to the system as well, right? I can see expansions, I can see new factions, I could, even see the development of maybe some miniatures in the future. None of those things are necessary for this to become a good game. It's already a good game, but I could see how it could expand that direction in the future and be very successful as well. As an end thought, if you are a miniature gamer and maybe you have friends who are not quite willing to make that jump yet, right? They don't really want to jump into painting and constructing and kind of becoming more of like this in-depth hobby. This game may be kind of a gateway for them because it has the feel of a board game and it has, the tokens that you move around, but you can kind of start seeing what might be fun with a miniature game. So maybe if you've got somebody on the fence, this would be a good game for you to try with them. It may kind of push them over into the miniature world if that's your goal. So like I said, overall, great game. I think it's well worth the money. Good play. I think you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of it, so I would definitely recommend that you pick up this game and give it a whirl. Alright, so that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to click subscribe and like so you get updates when new videos come out. Hope you have a great rest of your day, evening, morning, or whatever it is that you happen to be watching that. Stay safe, everybody. Talk to you next time.